Welcome to the Inside Integration Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend Jayson over there.
What's up, everybody?
And today we're going to do a little bit of a out of format for us, I think. Instead of just talking about baloney and whatever we come up with, we,
Well,
we're we've got a plan today.
it's all chopped liver at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean,
It's true. It's true. We are going to hit. We were reminiscing the other day and trying to come up with our top five like benchmark CI or AV products from like I don't know the last 20 or 25 years. Products that kind of we've all spent time dealing with them. They were kind of benchmarks on our journey here. Just whatever that piece of equipment was that seemed like everybody was doing at one time, and shaped our history here. So
yeah, we you got a hit list, like and not everybody's list is the same, and people's lists from different generations are going to be different, right? Like for me, I go back to the analog to digital era, so everything was a lot of component video cables, a lot of BNC cables, and then there was this new thing called DVI, and then this other funny little thing called an HDMI cable that wouldn't stay stuck into the ports on the back of given AV
right,
products or something like that. So,
had to tweak it a
yes,
little bit. I mean, it was far better than DVI. I mean, I think I remember my first foray with DVI was going between like a Vivix processor and a Runco projector, right? Like that was your my first DVI experience. When a guy you run a thing in the ceiling at pre-wire, and somebody comes along and decides to put a junction box for a chandelier right in the middle of that 40 conductor cable. Never happened to anybody, right?
no, just chop that thing with a sawzall, but
Yeah,
you leave it connected so that some of the wires actually still
right.
pass like some kind of continuity test, but others don't.
Well, I got green and I got clock, so
I mean, it's
we
got
get
to
up
be
there
in
and
there somewhere. Yeah, should be
right.
fine.
Right. And you had that guy who was, really good at soldering. You cut that hole in the ceiling and you got that guy soldering pins. And then you got the other guy who just rolls along with like B connectors and crimps them on. And it works perfect for 20 years. You never,
Dolphins. You'd be amazed at what you
that's
can
it.
do with a dolphin connector if given the opportunity.
Absolutely. But they had to be the silicon ones with the little
Oh
silicon
yeah,
shot in there, keep them nice and
with a
watertight.
with a little exactly a little dielectric boo boo
Yeah.
fixer. That's pretty cool. Uh,
So yeah, so we're gonna go over what we kind of came up with were our top five plus one honorable mention. And if you had a product in your history that made an impact and kind of thought it was everywhere at one time and then just maybe disappeared, or maybe it's still with us in some different version, please feel free chime in comments and hit us up with it. But I think the first one we're gonna hit here is the Denon AVR-3805, and
Man, there's a
dang.
model number. There's a model number that is very near and dear to my heart, for sure, for so many reasons. And not everybody's a Denon house. Not everybody had their hands on this piece of gear at any given time. There's probably a few integrators out there who have gone to do some upgrades on some homes along the way who have run into this box and gone, "What is in there? Is that actually a cement full of like? Is that a box full of cement?"
What is this absolute boat anchor? Why is the shelf bowed from being?
Why does it sound still so freaking amazing? Why is it so robust
Yeah,
and like rich sounding, but yet kind of kind of weighs more than probably me and my assistant put together. Super fun. I think for me with that particular model, the one feature that stands out to me, other than the power and that kind of stuff, is it was the very first receiver that I can ever remember having my hands on that would do the video transcoding and upscaling. So
yeah.
whether or not you plugged in a composite video cable or you plugged in an S video cable, watch out, everybody. We're going in the
Your
Wayback Machine
your
right now.
first gen Apple TV with
the
component
video
video out on it, right?
the video connection of tomorrow, S video. It would spit out. It would always upscale. And it would spit out that video over component. So in my programming days of trying to route certain video sources through AVRs and other ones directly to the display. And I mean, the sea of RCA and analog cables that will be plugged in behind Some of these TVs out there back in the day were pretty complicated.
Just
So,
big umbilicals with a bunch of
oh,
ends, and you know,
tie wrapped and form fit to
right.
match the curvature of the mount,
That
and
is it.
all of the time and effort wasted to go ahead and maybe ruin a cable with some extra strain relief or something like
Certainly,
that.
certainly.
I don't know what you're gonna do. I don't know what you're gonna run into, but that 3805 for me in those days was such a freaking godsend. Just be like, oh no, we just run one cable to the display now, and boom, there's all your video. We just switch to this box over here,
Right.
shows up over there, and it doesn't matter what you plug in here, your video game, your VCR, your
Yep.
DVD player. I mean, we're gonna plug them all in over in this box, and everything happens here on the other side. That was level up stuff in 2004, 2005 when I had my hands on that box.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look up what the date of this thing was because it's, it's kind of, after you've been doing this for a long time, you can't really put a date on it, right? But yeah, I was, I was quite surprised to see it was 2004, which man is like 20 years ago now. I'm thinking like, well, it's not that old. No, it's been out
Oh,
for 20 years.
it's been around. It's a classic almost. If it was a classic car in 5 years, it gets a special license plate.
It had a port on the front for your video camera because that was still kind of a thing back in 2004 before everybody had it on their phone. And yeah, what I remember most about it was, I mean, you would put this behemoth in, and it would kind of be the centerpiece or the anchor of a home theater. But one of the ways that you would be able to justify to a client that here's a $3,000 AV receiver was that we could do multi-room audio off of it, right? So you have amplified second zone, and we can run these extra wires out to your deck so that you can have a separate zone outside. And yeah, that was a jam. And then plus that was kind of everybody's first foray into making sure that your Odyssey microphone was in the right spot so that you could
Oh my
do
gosh.
like a full room correction, in a horrible acoustic room, right? Set this
Yeah.
thing up, put that microphone out there, run that sucker, and it did a really great job of making everything sound good. Put that 120 watts of channel to really good use.
Yeah, oh, again, for me, it's just one of those warm and fuzzy moments, and maybe now it doesn't really, matter because a lot of these things have become ubiquitous, and it's just another black box, and they all kind of have those similar functions and similar features. But I agree. I think Denon in that particular era really charted a new course for what the AV market is supposed
Oh
to be
yeah.
and what AVRs are supposed to do. And I think, frankly, a lot of people followed suit. They're like, oh, I guess we need to have some of this like single connection to the display type stuff. And if this thing's really going to be the center of, as you say, a home theater system
Right.
or a multimedia system, then it really should be the centerpiece and have all the connectivity and make things easy to connect to the other devices out there.
Just some of the things that we take for granted today, like input assignments, right? Like
Oh my God.
imagine taking an AVR out of the box today and not being able to assign this digital to this input or this video to this input or whatever. And like imagine what that was like back in the day where you were stuck with I need to plug this thing into tape one,
Right.
or whatever it was, right? Like it's mind boggling now, but man, 20 years ago, that wasn't really a thing until this kind of came along. And they, to Denon's credit, they kind of identified this CI market back in the day, with,
Early,
yeah,
for
early.
sure.
Hey, customizable, right? Let's, labeling your inputs. Again, Odyssey room calculations, right? Plenty of inputs and outputs for whatever junk you wanted to plug into this thing. And, it's commendable because they sort of saw the CI market back in the day, and not a lot of people were doing this, and they did a couple of things that were really good for us installers out there, and kind of let us, again, as a lowly installation technician, if I'm going back to the office and I'm telling our engineers like, hey, this AVR is great, it really saves a lot of time, like, yeah, that's, you're sort of putting your thumb on the scale with that one.
that's the one that you're going to sell every time because I know that's exactly what we did. We're like,
Exactly.
hey, I know that we have these other brands that you guys like to talk about, but we don't sell those ones anymore. We sell this one. We sell Denon. We sell a lot of Denon. We're going to sell Denon
Yep.
all day, every install. That's what clients are getting from now on.
Yep.
Speaking of kind of the ubiquitous recommendation, right? Moving on into the in,
Paired nicely and
pair.
dovetailing with our
Oh my
previous
God, I was just about to say, talk about a 1-2 punch.
is your package.
Yeah, this is the, and certainly one I am absolutely 100% guilty of putting into people's homes was, the Pioneer Elite Plasma TV, right? Like, as far as, shall we say, a transitional video product is out there, I think Pioneer Plasma pretty much takes the cake from
Still does.
2002, 2003 until like 2011, 2012, something like that, when 4K LCDs and stuff really started to take off. Like,
Sure.
I mean, Pioneer ran the board on the market with that product.
Yeah,
And I can't really understate that enough.
that Kuro, I mean, when that thing, when that Kuro came out and that thing was just the deepest blacks you've ever seen on a display. I mean, it blew people's minds. It really blew people. I can't tell you how many home theater packages with, with that Denon or the equivalent Marantz plus, plus that Kuro.
Oh,
It was everybody got the same package, and you could demo it really well. It was, it really blew people out of the water because you could put it up next to just about anything in that vintage, and there was nothing close. I don't know what special sauce they put in there. I don't know what it was, and it wasn't even, it wasn't even ridiculously expensive. It was, felt like a pretty good value, and yeah, man, those black levels, holy moly.
they started out expensive. I'm going to say
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
There were 20. There was a period of time where there was 15,000 $14,000 42-inch, pure Pioneer Kuro displays out there, and I looked many clients in the eye and said, you should probably go for the 65 at $25,000. It's a much better value.
Right.
Um,
Per
and
inch.
and a straight face, no,
Yep.
not I believed it at the time, right? Like I was like, oh my God, it's never going to get better than this. You absolutely should buy this. But yeah, I mean
Right.
that era of video, I just think about how transformative that really was. Big TVs were either these ridiculous CRTs that three or four guys had to cart into your house, or they
Sure.
were horrible rear projection TVs that you had to be,
Yep.
right in front of. And again, you still probably needed a few guys to get the thing
Yep.
in and out of your house. And then now it's this little skinny thing, relatively speaking. I mean, if you looked at a 50-inch Pioneer Elite right now, you'd go, "Oh my God, the thing is huge and disgusting. Look at the bezel on this.
Yep.
It's nasty." But at the time, it was like revolutionary. It was the Samsung frame of the era.
Right. That's true.
So to really see that technology, roll out and become the bread and butter. And I know I'm not alone when I say that the Pioneer Elite definitely put a few bucks in my pocket through that decade or more of service for sure.
Well, and it certainly ushered in an era of, TV too high, right? Like mounting your TV too
Oh,
high, because now here's this thin panel that you can get it above the fireplace, and
mounted on the ceiling like on a Philips
that
Philips
commercial.
commercial.
Oh man,
Whew.
so many
Yeah,
people we talked out of that one.
yeah.
But previously, right, it was a 350-pound 40-inch Sony Trinitron that was going to be in some kind of super reinforced cabinet,
That was
down at
purpose
optimal
built.
viewing height, right? And
That was purpose built to actually hold the weight of that
yeah,
particular display up so it didn't turn to dust.
or it was a 3-gun rear projection that, if you bump the thing in the slightest way or your cat jumped off of it, now you have to come back and realign all 3 guns. That that wasn't ideal. And this really just kind of blew people out of the water with how great it looked and how versatile just flat panels in general at that point were, in putting it. And one of the it's kind of a shame because this, that TV, probably that model specifically, was one of the casualties of, that economic downturn in 2008, right? Like the big,
And the
the big,
commoditization, yeah,
yeah,
there's the big commoditization of TVs. Like when New Vision came out with that, there's custom frames that were on plasma TVs or Samsung or Pioneer or whatever they were.
yeah,
Wink, wink. We won't say whose this display actually is, but when it turns on, it says Pioneer. I don't know why,
hmm,
but
must be a bug.
it didn't work, right? Like because there was so many HD TVs out there, they were becoming so inexpensive. Not that we see that same thing kind of happening now,
Sure.
but it was one of those things where again that premium video segment got absolutely killed by 2008. And then the race to the bottom kind of began, and we
Yep.
saw the revolution of 4K on the horizon.
It's true, yeah, because it was, two, dual factors here, right? Like obviously everybody is concerned about economic downturn, and we really didn't know what to expect in 2008. I mean, I can tell you as somebody who was dumb enough to quit a job, right in August of
I'm
2008,
I'm right here. I can hear you talking.
didn't quite.
Oh, you're talking about yourself.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we didn't see it coming. And it just kind of sat on the bench for a little while. But it was, people really they pulled those purse strings real tight.
Fast.
And yeah, and these were extraneous purchases that, people couldn't make at that point, and it took a little while to get back. And to your point, it's sort of, hey, we still got to keep selling TVs, so that race to the bottom kind of began in earnest. And again, dedicated rooms and that sort of thing, it sort of all took a back seat.
Yeah,
Everything's got to get cheaper for us to keep this market going.
everything sort of took a whack in the head. Yeah, probably myself was included in 2008, and unfortunately, the premium video market for Pioneer and for some of the bigger players out there just frankly dried up in front of them, and then we see those casualties, right? The high end Panasonics, the high end Pioneers,
Yeah.
those. I mean, JVC made a plasma TV. Like,
Yep.
there were. I mean, Zenith made a plasma TV. If you
Yep.
can, like, I mean, I'm
I
really
re-
dusting off some of the
Hey,
classics
that
here,
that
but
Zenith of that era, that was a 60-inch plasma, and everybody was blown away by how big that sucker could be. Because before that, you had the 42-inch and the 50-inch Fujitsu, which was kind of the gold standard, right? And then Zenith
for
comes
sure.
out with this brushed, this brushed silver 60-inch behemoth that weighed a ton and needed 17 studs to mount to and everything else. And
Yeah.
yeah, just
I
sort of
needed 17 studs to pick it up to get it out of the box because, oh my God, the thing weighed a
that's right.
freaking ton. And
It's,
if, for anybody that's like, what are these old kooks talking about? Just do a little Google search for Zenith
yeah,
Plasma TV circa 2005, 2006.
glass was
Uh,
heavy. It
Woo!
was some thick glass back in the day.
Baby, that thing was bulletproof, Elon. Come on.
It's true,
That
man.
thing
It
was
was. It
ready
was the
for it.
Cybertruck of.
Like, I don't know I don't know why I just associated those two things together, but it actually fits pretty well,
Absolutely, yeah. That
shockingly.
was a tank, and then it
Uh,
was, yeah, it was a weird. That was definitely a weird time because yeah, you had the 42, the 50, right? Those Fujitsus were beautiful. You had a Kuro that was out there that was absolutely gorgeous. You had this 60-inch Zenith that was like the size king, and then suddenly you had the 100-inch Panasonic that came out and needed a dedicated 220 line.
yeah.
You needed to make sure that your HVAC in the room that it was in was tight, right? Because that
Oh
sucker threw
yeah.
some heat.
This thing's gonna be throwing off some flames, boy.
And that's our large flat panel, right? And now you're not really seeing too much larger than that in a one piece flat panel at this point. But
No,
that was the genesis, man. That was the Wild West back then.
they're all modular, right? So I mean, now you can build a display any size you want. I mean, ask our friends at Quantum Media or
Exactly.
anybody, right? Like just there are
Right.
companies out there that can make them to the exact size that you want. Pixel resolution doesn't really matter.
Right.
It's all about
Hey, you don't need
size.
glass. It doesn't need to be a 100-inch sheet of glass anymore. It can, now it could be modular and micro
And
LED and
we
get
can
that
bring in
dot
a
pitch down.
16-foot wide
Right.
by 9 foot tall thing in little boxes. There's a
That's
lot
it.
of boxes, but we can bring them in one at a time, so it'll all fit in the elevator. It's pretty
Certainly
cool.
it. And yeah, that's back in the day. But so the third thing we're going to hit is, it's funny because our top three seems like, at least the shops that I worked at, that was the package, right? Like our first three things here were literally three items included in the living room home theater package. And, number three is the Philips Pronto.
Drink. Oh, sorry.
Drink. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're playing the drinking game at home, every time we say Philips Pronto, which I just said means you've got to take another drink, whether that's coffee, soda, water, or something a little bit more high potency. It's I don't make the rules; I just enforce them. So we said
Sure.
Philips Pronto, so every time we say that, you got to drink.
And that
Ah,
thing, I mean, that Philips Pronto, that thing was, we're talking again. I had to look at the date just to find out when the date was, and I mean, this thing came out in '98, right? So
right.
think about how long 1998 was. It's not just two
Oh my
years;
God.
it's a long time back.
Yeah, it's outside of this current century, right? So just think about it in that respect.
And
Yeah,
and I mean, it was largely unchanged for a couple years, right? So this thing comes out, and there's like software to program it. Like, think about all the steps that you needed to go into to get that Philips Pronto working. First of all, you needed a laptop, which in 1998, yes, laptops obviously existed, but these things were pretty big. They were pretty expensive, and you needed a field technician with a laptop to be able to program this thing so it would go. You also needed a serial port. You needed the software to do it. You needed some training to do it, which didn't really exist other than like just reading the small manual and figuring this stuff out on your own. So, to fill that gap, you had websites like, Daniel Tonks
and
and
Remote
Remote
Central,
Central,
yeah, for sure.
and people sharing graphics and sharing IR files and sharing all this cool stuff. It was really like, we're talking about the remote here, but a big, that was a big catalyst to getting other people in this industry and kind of bringing them together, right? Like, Remote Central was the place to be back in the day, right? You had the AV Sciences
Oh my
Forum,
gosh.
and you had Remote Central, and that's kind of where all of us CI nerds kind of
Oh,
gravitated towards
it,
each other.
it really was kind of ground zero for a lot of, again, you just mentioned the AVS forums. I'd totally forgotten about
Yeah,
the threads and the network stuff and like
just
the deep
flame wars over projector stats, right?
Oh,
Like, whoa.
the deep and like the deep bitmaps that people would like try to do like grayscale of, name your celebrity naked, in grayscale,
Right.
just to have something horrible pop up on their Philips Pronto. I mean, my first experience with that was actually came in the box with a Marantz
Right.
receiver, right? So it was like
The
I want
Wizard.
to, yeah, but I want to say that it was somebody like oh my gosh, there's like an audio brand that would like that had like the reference 10 and the ref 30. They would come with MX remotes in the box, right?
Okay.
So it was already an MX remote, and somewhere after this, I'm going to remember the name of this audio company because everybody's going to go, "Oh my God, I had one of those" or
And yeah,
whatever.
and,
But
and if you're screaming at your radio or computer right
I
now,
can't
leave it
hear
in the
you. But
comments.
yeah, please put it in the comments. But I want to say it's like Bowers or something, but that's
Sure.
not it.
Okay.
But conversely, so to answer that, Marantz is like, oh well, with our higher end AVR product, with the highest end one, we're gonna put a Philips Pronto in there. So that was the very first
Right.
place that I ever remember seeing like clients like, oh yeah, we have this other remote, and I'm like,
Yeah, this
other
was in the
remote.
box.
I was like, oh crap, like I don't even know what this does, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Yep.
And then we saw the Philips Pronto 2 come out, which was that silver one with the two little toggle buttons on the bottom.
Sure.
And then we got the Philips Pronto Pro, which was like a tablet thing that lurked for like 5 minutes, and then
Yeah,
they were
just
kind of out of
flashed in the pan there real quick.
it.
But that
But
was, I mean, that was really, the first kind of customizable, like let AV guys kind of show, hey, this is how we're different than just any other trunk slammer. We can program this thing to do all sorts of things. And you had Lutron codes in there, right? Like you could point this thing at your graphic eye wall station and control the lights in your theater. I mean,
oh my God.
that blew so many people's minds when you would build a theater, you'd have a graphic eye, it had an IR port on it. You'd put those commands into the remote and then you'd fire off a macro to start a movie. And first of all, it would flip to a page that said, please wait, projector starting up, because that was a thing.
Yeah.
and,
You had to
and it
wait a
would,
minute
yeah, and
with
it
a
would,
timer.
yep, that's
I
it.
did
There
the
you
movie
go.
clock. That was definitely something that I did a lot
And it was just a
for.
loop page and it was a, repeat 8 times or whatever it was. And like you would sit there and you would count down the time that it would take the projector to fire up and switch to the right input. And like, turn off the house lights, turn the sconces in a room up, to a certain level, set the stair lights and that kind of thing. And I mean, that was a lot of folks' first experience with like the magic that we can do in this industry. It really felt like I have a movie theater in my home, and you know what? Whatever I spent on it and the installation and that expert to come out and do this thing, it feels like it was worth it. And I mean, talk about selling the experience, right? Like this is where we
Comes
were.
down to this weird little gadget in my hand that is really the culmination of all of the money that I just spent on this entire system. And this little
Absolutely.
gadget that I'm touching in my hand, although it's kind of analog and rudimentary, actually is my gateway to dazzle my guests with
Yep.
all the things, or put my favorite channel icons on. Again, all the things that
Yep.
clients now are like, why is this taking so long? At the time it was like, you waited for dial-up on AOL, my friend.
It's
Like,
true.
you
Hey,
were used to a landing page. You were used to things booting up. Like that you were
yep.
like, oh, this is just my booting up save
And
phase. It's
and if
fine.
you didn't download the latest codes to go with the gear that you had before you got on site, chances are it was going to be another trip because there was really no good internet on job sites at that point. You needed to have this thing planned and ready to go. And just the things we take for granted these days, right? Like having a contact page on your Pronto, right? So you'd put a help button on there, you'd press help, and it would pop up
Huh.
your company's name, maybe with a logo if you were real good. And
Some poor sucker's phone number on there.
yep, yeah, your
call
service guy's phone number on there, so you can call at any time, day or night. And
call Jason when you're about 4 or 5 gin and tonics deep,
right,
after a day in the sun, and you barbecuing, you're sunburned, you're mad because you
because now
cannot
you're
get.
looking in front of your friends
Yeah,
like your thing was not worth it,
you're
and that's
waving
a big
around the Philips Pronto in anger, not realizing that you've picked up the Pronto from the wrong part of the house. And
right,
because you're so wealthy, you have multiple Philips Prontos, and the one that
right.
you need for your bar area isn't the one that you're about to throw in the pool. Not that I know anybody that
No,
had that happen to
that's
them.
never happened to an installer ever. Nobody's ever had that experience.
No. But I wanted to circle back here. That audio brand I was referring to is B&K.
Ah, B and K,
Yeah,
who themselves had a pretty, they had a home control system of their own, right? Like that.
they certainly tried, and again, that was the whole deal with the URC stuff that was in the
Sure.
box. Hey, if you buy this, you've got a gateway in your room that you can pair to an RF gateway. I think they might have even had a Crestron version, if memory serves, at one point, where you could
Hmm.
actually buy it and it would come with
Yep.
a remote that you could tie into a Crestron system, or add as like, oh, here's a wand for your living room, or for this part of the home. I'm sure that never worked
I
properly,
remember
but
I remember being a green system estimator back in the day, and that was basically like you'd put together a proposal for a sales guy, and I remember forgetting that Crestron tie-in piece on a project, and that project going all the way through multiple checks and everything, and then having a guy on site call in and say, "Hey, we
where's
need
this?
we need this," and it was weeks that it was back order or whatever, and I just kind of remember totally just Ate my hat on that one.
Yeah, just
I know.
hanging yourself in the shower every night, just
Just
not
feeling,
all the way, just to feel the rope on your neck
yep,
a little
just
bit, just
feeling
like,
terrible,
oh God,
Sure. Yep. Oops.
oh man, if I didn't
It's
have
not
something
gonna
to do
work.
tomorrow, I'd go through with this, but oh
There,
well.
there you go. There you go. So
Oh,
yeah, so our top three is your typical home theater package from from that era, and number four. To tie this all together, number four kind of represents the next step in home theater and kind of a transition at that point. And this bad boy is like from 2012. And Jayson, if you'd like to introduce
oh,
your
sure.
baby, sure.
Yeah, my baby, absolutely. I had the distinct honor of uh, introducing this product to the world for my former employer, Mr. Sony Electronics, or Mrs. Sony Electronics. I'm not exactly sure if there's even a gender over there, but the giant conglomerate that is. In 2012, we launched the original 4K home cinema projector, the 1000 ES. And that was what, shall we say, the beginning of kind of the road that we're on now, frankly.
Yep.
Before there was 4K displays in earnest, before there was even 4K content in earnest, there was the 1000 ES. And I
Hmm.
can remember very clearly coming from Van World, where I'd been very very recently prior to launching this product, and going like, what in the world is that? Like, 2000 lumens didn't really seem like all that much, considering I'd been a Runco guy and I'd been doing some pretty high end installs up until that point. But I do remember walking into the demo theater at CEDIA that year, and there being a voice actor at the front of the room, like they had it was choreographed, like they had it all worked out where it was going to be like kind of like the old days, with showmanship and
Sure.
a qualified expert to speak to. And don't ask the presenter, ask, he's talent. Ask the guys on the floor.
Yeah. Right.
He looks good and he knows how to talk. Talk to the experts out on the floor. But I mean, bringing that projector to market and seeing what it looked like in person and going, geez, like maybe the brightness isn't everything that it needs to be. Look at that picture.
Yep.
And I think that really started the road that we're kind of back on again today, with the circular ebbs and flows, or if it's a biowave, it's a sine wave, that really kind of started us back on the uptick of new high performance home theater, new high performance flat panels, new flat panels that cost $25,000, etc.
Right.
All of the things that we were just talking about earlier. That really was the get off point. And as many people as like to claim, oh, we were doing 4K too. You guys were not doing 4K.
Yeah. Not
You were not
quite.
doing 4K in the home. You were not doing any of those things. There were certainly some products that came to market shortly after, but in reality, I mean, you got to give credit where it's due. And Sony really kind of set a new benchmark when it
Oh
came
yeah,
to
and
home
there
cinema.
in 2012, I mean, there was really, your 4K content was pretty much limited to Blu-rays, and who was
Well,
making Blu-ray
there was,
players?
yeah, there was in 2012 when that thing came out. There was literally no content. There was no standard.
Yeah,
There was a server that had a video card in it with some, shall we say, appropriated content
right,
from Sony Pictures in the form of a trailer that was really like a DVI 2K digital intermediate, like this whole thing to
right,
sort of spoof 4K to get it through an HDMI cable. So to think about this projector that predated all of those standards just to make sure they could get it on the market, then when there was a standard for the HDMI cable and for the content transmission, and to your point,
sure,
4K Blu-ray,
yep,
oh, we should probably come out with this video card that you can upgrade the projector with, and we're going to allow you to pay for that privilege. So,
right,
awesome
right,
job, Sony. Like, we're going to build so many parts and do an upgrade on the unit, and you'll get a content player. And there's a whole package of stuff that went along with that.
sure,
And unfortunately, that's just not something that we see uh, companies doing. But I don't think even clients have that expectation at this point anymore. If they spend big money on something like that, maybe they do. But again, it was great to see Sony stand behind that product and like, hey, we're not going to leave you behind. We're going to make sure that you can have 4K content with this
sure,
hockey puck server and tablet and content you can watch in your projector, so you don't look like a sunburned goof yelling at
Right.
your Philips
Right.
Pronto out by your bar in the backyard.
And that's I remember that I was I was heavily involved with Savant at that point, and Savant used to have a frame chassis that was, it was basically the center of your whole system, right? So it would do audio distribution, it would do video distribution. And I remember that, when that projector came out and it's like, wow, we really are going to 4K. Okay, let's figure this out. There was a lot of head scratching of, okay, how are we going to distribute 4K now? Like, what are the amount of bandwidth? I mean, you're going to cook wires inside walls with how much
That doesn't work over
how many
Cat 5e. Oh wow!
exactly, right? So yeah, that was,
But it's shielded. It should be fine.
yeah. No, you have to buy the low skew cat wire because that
Oh,
was, make sure it's shielded, which nobody in your company knows how to crimp because, hey,
it's an extra tool. That's an
AV
extra
guys.
tool.
But yeah, those were heady times, man. That was your, and then your sales pitch became like, well, you want to be future proof, so this is the projector that you want, and put it in, and yeah, man, it was definitely groundbreaking for sure.
They are still out there today. I've received phone calls as of this year of clients saying, "Hey, do you know where I could get a bulb for one of these?" And me going,
Oh yeah, lamps,
"Wow,
man. Remember lamps? You used to have to
wow."
swap the lamp.
Let me tell you something, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. I could sell you. We could, comb the depths of the desert and look for one of these lamps for you, or
Trust
we
me,
can hook you
get a
up
new
with
projector.
a new version called the 5000 ES. It's much smaller, much lighter.
It's
It'll be
5 times better,
brighter,
obviously.
and will look amazing. And I mean, no, not to poo-poo what was going on with the 1000 ES, but time marches on, right? So
Yep.
it's crazy how how that kind of stuff just changes over time. But again, I don't think we would have the rich home theater marketplace that we're enjoying currently if it weren't for a product like the 1000 ES to sort of get out there and set a new bar, frankly.
Absolutely. So along with that, again, this is all it's funny because yeah, your list is very video centric, which kind of shows where
That's
where
where I'm
you're
from,
coming
baby.
from. Number five was really kind of a pioneer of like, it's your content. You should be able to do with it what you'd like. Before all that got shot down and burnt to the ground and everything else. But the Escient Fireball media server was something that was I was part of a lot of installs
I can
with.
hear the groans
Ooh,
right now through the internet. A bunch of people going, "Oh
are
God, Ashen Fireball!" Ah,
I don't know if that's the groan or the carousel of the Blu-ray
of the
changer
CD
DVD.
changer.
It might not be a groan. That might just be a.
Yeah, it's putting up discs and putting them into place. My God.
But I mean, that was the jam, right? Like essentially, this thing was a box, and it connected to and interfaced with a DVD changer. Um, I think it was a Sony 777 or something like that, if
There
I'm
were
not
a
mistaken.
few, yeah, there were a few options there. I know that when I sold Escient, we always sold the Sony 777 or 555, I think was before that.
Right.
But there was also a Kenwood Exelon option,
Oh, right,
which
right.
you rued the day that you bought that one.
Yeah. No, you really want to go with this guy,
You
right?
really didn't want to buy that particular one, but if you did, you figured it out pretty shortly afterwards why we were recommending the Sony. But
Right.
that's okay. That was a different time. But again, for everybody that takes on-demand programming for granted,
Hmm.
this baby was the absolute. I mean, it was Moneyball before Moneyball was a thing, right? Like Kaleidoscape came, and that was the digital
Certainly.
arrays, and that was certainly top tier,
Yep.
right? If you had that
That
the
user
concerto system,
interface,
right? Like
sure,
that
blew
that thing
everybody's
was,
minds. Yep.
and it still does. It's still a
Certainly.
class of the field, but
Yep.
for the rest of us down here on planet Earth, the Escient Fireball, if you had your DVD collection and you wanted to organize it, you wanted to have kids' movies, you wanted to have it all the jacket art, and you wanted to be able to press a button and start a movie, and I'll put this in quotations, instantaneously.
Right. Well, yeah, with
um,
the time that it took, it to send a command to the disk slot number and have it roar
exactly.
into place and then fire up and bypass the menu, which was a killer feature at the time.
Was very, very much a killer feature at the
Yep.
time.
Sure.
There was no other game in town. There literally wasn't. I mean, Sony had the ability to put their changer on the network, and it would go out there and look for jacket art,
Yep.
but it was a little kludgy. The Fireball
Yeah.
gave you the ability to obviously put your movies and stuff together, but also unified your music collection. So when you think about
Right.
how maligned that product is in hindsight, because of all of the pains and woes and truck rolls and all the stuff that went along with it. I mean, you don't build Rome in a day, and you're certainly not making an omelet without breaking a few eggs. And I would say the Escient Fireball broke all the eggs, baby.
It's and it was very much. I think this thing came out. Everybody saw the potential in it. Everybody saw, everybody's rooting for it, which is why there was a lot of patience with working out bugs and how do we get, okay, so what Grace Note database do we need to access to get in here? How do I correct, my artwork or whatever? And so the answer to a lot of those questions at first was, well, here's the thing, you don't. You just kind of live with it.
Yeah.
But these are the halcyon days of trying to figure out content back in the day, before there was an iTunes, before there was any kind of streaming. Like, your discs were,
Oh
your own
man.
collection. You bought a ton of discs, you had a changer, and if there was something you didn't have, you could do a Netflix rental, which was actually a disc in the mail, which may blow some minds out there depending on, where our demographics are. But it was very much disc based, and that was fine. That was great, back in my day. But that was your content protection, but at the expense of convenience. And stuff like the Escient was meant to kind of make this process a little bit more convenient. You can store all your stuff in one place. You can access it. I mean, how many Escient systems did you put in that were part of a video distribution system,
Oh
right? So
goodness.
you
I
have a
mean,
couple of these things,
multiple.
and
That's
that was
that's
your,
the
yeah,
that's the other part. Like, I mean, not the name drop, but like, like Chris Tucker of Jackie Chan movie fame. I'm trying to remember what those movies are called.
Rush Hour.
Well, Rush Hour. There
Yep.
we go. And Friday fame.
Yep.
He was a client. I mean,
Damn.
when he saw what the Escient was all about, he was like, I want one of those for my office. I want one of those for our living room. I want one of those in my bedroom, and I want all the same movies in each one of those players. And can you do it today?
Yep.
And of
Because it was
course,
groundbreaking. It was
and,
revolutionary. It was
and
before anything like iTunes existed. You know.
nobody had seen anything like that. And of course, we have to talk him off the ledge. Like, I'm sorry, I don't stock nine
Right.
777 changers and fireballs and Pioneer Plasma TVs, frankly, to go along with it. But it's going to take a little bit of time to even download all your movies. What I need you to do is go to Best Buy and buy all the movies that you want in
Right.
triplicate, and then show up at the house so that when I show up with my buddies, there's an obnoxious amount of DVDs
Right. Which you
in
as
the
the
foyer.
installer are going to have to open
Every single one.
every one. Yep.
Put in the changer times three times three. It was a better time, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Those were the days, man. There was a lot of fun to be had in those days. We didn't. I kind of feel like we didn't know, and it sucks to reminisce here, I guess. But it's you don't really realize how much fun that stuff was when you're in the middle of it, and then you kind of look back at it, and it's like, wow, that was quaint. But at the same time, I didn't have to worry about I didn't need 75 subscriptions. I could own my library,
I
and
didn't need anything other than a good internet connection at maybe 56
yep.
56K or,
I
or
just need to
whatever.
send the serial number to the service and send back the metadata, and that's a
I just this is going
20
to be an
megabyte file. Great.
exactly. It's going to
Half
be
an
an
hour later.
ongoing process. We're going to see you guys in a couple of days when these are all done. I remember the reaction to that was like, a couple of days.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I just put 1,500 movies in times three.
Yep.
It's going to take a little while for these machines to figure out what movies those are. Oh, okay. And of course, they leave, come back, months later, and it's like, hey, this isn't working.
Right.
Well, because it says Escient Fireball on the outside of it, that might be
Oh,
the first problem. But
I hear
yeah,
this grinding coming out of my rack. I don't know what that is. It's your changer for sure.
it's fine.
100% it's your changer.
Just, just don't worry about it. Just ignore it. It'll go away.
So after that trip down memory lane, and that was
Yeah.
that Escient was pretty much the standard in a lot of projects with video. But the one that I wanted to kind of get in here as an honorable mention, which we could probably spend a lot more time talking about this thing, than we really have here. But the Panasonic hybrid phone system that was a part of every large installation that probably every single AVCI technician for a good span of about 15 years, that was a part of your home, right? This is before, this is when you needed extensions everywhere and you needed centralized, voicemail and, being able to unlock the gate from,
I
somebody
was
rolls up to your gate, presses the button, it's got to ring at every extension in the house except for the baby's room. Usually it required a dedicated guy in your company who is a phone system programmer. I mean, imagine that concept, right? Like you roll out there and here's your
we
Panasonic software that's completely outdated. We need to change these extensions and print them out on special paper so they fit in the thing. But that system felt like it was in every single project. Like everybody had a KSU on the wall or in the rack in later years. And man, that thing was everywhere. And this is before everybody had a cell phone on them. And
oh,
you were talking about a StarTAC, right? Like I
well,
need a phone system in my home.
wow, you and I have been talking for much too long already because we mind melded that. I
That's
was
it.
literally imagining the only cell phone you would have had was a little Motorola TAC or
Yep.
StarTAC flip open, and like, oh, sorry, I'm getting crappy reception
Well,
here
because
because
I'm in
there are
my
no cell phone
home. My
towers.
cell
Yeah.
phone doesn't work in my home, right? Like, remember those days? Holy moly. Oh, yeah, wait, I got to step outside to make a phone call on my cell phone because I don't have service inside of my house. That was the norm. That was
It,
absolutely the norm.
It totally was. Yeah, I was thinking about the again. I was shuddering while you were introducing that little product down memory lane because I mean, yeah, so many days of okay, I've got to walk out again on a state-sized projects. It's like
Sure.
does the guardhouse ring? Well, shit, I don't know. Okay,
Right. That's a
I
quarter mile
gotta
away.
go. There's no golf cart here. Shit, like
Yep.
I gotta huff it to get out there. Or the same thing. Does the gate, does the silent watchman at the gate, does that
Right.
interface with the door trigger, gate trigger for the KDX Panasonic phone? And then
Yep.
what number do I need to press on the dial pad to open up the front gate versus the back gate versus
Right.
like, oh my God, yeah, the
Just
complexity.
the complexity. I mean, it was a business phone system, and that was the thing that was closest to what somebody with a 10,000, 20,000 square foot house would need, right? Because it's essentially an office, right? Like
100%.
extensions everywhere, centralized voicemail, all the little features, being able to, you remember trying to figure out where you would have to put the cell location so that you could roam around the home with the thing and didn't drop out here or drop out here. And, you'd have to make sure that you picked up the right phone if you were going to go this way or that way. These are, not to tell a tale of woe here, and we got a lot better these days, but those systems were everywhere. And I remember, I'd be working on a final and I wasn't specifically, in the phone programming thing. And like, the client would come over and talk to you and see what you're doing. And it'd say, yeah, I need to reprogram some of these extensions and whatever. And like, I remember having to tell him like, okay, no problem. I'll let our phone guy know. And dedicated phone guy would need to be on site. And that
Dedicated
guy,
phone guy.
he would spend hours with the client making sure that all the stuff was set up right, making sure that all those overlays were printed out and ready to go. And that was how this all worked. And there was nothing better. I mean, I'm struggling to figure out another residential phone system that people put
Uniden
in back in the day.
Uniden had one that we worked with for a little while that was an attempt at something high end residential that had again the centralized voicemail. It did have like the music on hold thing.
Uh-huh.
That was like its one
Sure.
claim to fame that I can remember. But it did not work, and we ended up ripping that out and putting it in the Panasonic. You know, it was like this was a cost saving measure, you know, recommended by the client to carve out, you know, $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever. I remember thinking at the time, like, do you know what like our labor rate is? Like it's $200 an hour. Like we're gonna be burning through this 2 grand real quick. You know, like you should have just bought the good one, and we would be done with this instead of out here goofing around with it and giving labor dollars away. But yeah.
I think that's a pretty good list. I mean, I think we definitely hit, you know, I think for me personally, you know, that top 5 is pretty strong, where these were the things that were just completely ubiquitous in CI for that amount of time. These are game changers. These are things that came along that, you know, they were, I mean, you could throw other stuff in the list. Obviously, Collight Escape was a game changer
of
as
course.
well.
Whatever you call it, the Sharp Aquas TV with the yellow pixel. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there that we didn't talk about that maybe was a big deal to you.
Sure.
Tell us about it. Throw us a comment. Hit us up on the Instas. It's at inside_integration on Instagram. And certainly the comments are wide open here on the videos. If you're listening to us on the audio podcast, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe. Tell your friends, even if they don't listen, just tell them to subscribe. We need the algorithm to make it look like we're a lot bigger than we are.
Right.
And it
gather
costs you
all
nothing.
the bots you can.
Yeah, exactly. Just pick up your friend's phone, look at their podcast selection, and just add us in there without even saying anything.
Right.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we
appreciate.
might
turn somebody onto this.
That's right. Or turn them completely off, and they won't ever ask you about your industry or your job ever again. It could be a win-win for you. We don't really know.
That is smart thinking. That is smart thinking. Yep.
All kidding aside, we appreciate you guys listening. I think this was actually a pretty fun one. It's a good trip, a good little trip down memory lane.
Not bad for something we came up with literally 10 minutes before we got on air. So
I was going to say 5 minutes, but that's fair.
But yeah, thanks for listening. And, you know, again, let us know. Tell us how we're doing. Thanks.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.